Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mind Movers, and I am so excited to have the incredible Dr. Tara on with us today. Tara is actually the presenter on Celebs Go Dating. She is here all the way from LA and she is making waves, and that's not just on national television but also with what she's doing within the sphere of social media. She's been navigating love and sex life, particularly around Gen Z, having open conversations that we've never had before. Dr. Tara is also a professor.
Yes.
A professor at a university in the States, and she is an expert in her own right. And I'm just too excited to have this conversation with her. So welcome, Dr. Tara.
I'm excited to be here.
It is so wonderful to have you here. So I have so many questions, right? And the first question is, where I like to start from the beginning, how did you end up becoming a sex expert?
Short answer or long answer?
Give us the long answer, because we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I love telling this story because then people can really understand where I come from and, you know, all of the cumulative experiences that I've had in life that are very different.
Yeah.
So I'm, like you said, my last name is really long.
I tried.
Suvinyati Chai Porn.
It has porn on the
It
end.
has porn. It has porn at the
Fitting.
end because in Thai culture, in Thai language, porn means a blessing.
Yeah, I love that. There we go. Porn means a blessing in Thai
I
culture.
usually say that in the university class that I teach, and I usually have like a boy student says, "It's a blessing for me too."
Yeah, I love that so much.
I'm like, shut up. But I'm originally from Thailand.
Yeah.
I grew up very religious, Buddhist, in Bangkok with my very loving parents. I have an older sister. But within this very loving context, there's still so much repression around being a girl and around sexuality and being interested in dating and sex and naked bodies and body parts and whatnot. So I went to an all-girls Catholic school from like the very beginning of time, like from first grade up until I finished middle school. And in all girls Catholic school, you learn a lot of these subliminal messages about your body as a girl, right? So our uniforms have to like cover our wrists and our knees because knees are sexy and you don't want to be provoking men. So it's these little things that I grew up with that really cemented this idea that when you're a girl, well, number one, you are inferior to men. Number two, you have to cover yourself always because you don't want to be provoking them. And number three, you should not be interested in anything related to sexuality because that's a sin, and that it's related to being a bad woman. You want to be a good woman. You want to be a wife material woman. So these were cemented to me since young age, and I grew up on those messages. I grew up believing that that's true. So I was always striving for just trying to be the best I can be, a good girl in that context.
So I had to interrupt you there because I actually have a very similar upbringing. So I went to a Catholic school.
Oh my God.
My parents are Middle Eastern, and there was so much Christian guilt growing up. And it actually got so bad at one point in my life that my dad's family kind of cut me and my sister out, blamed my mother because we didn't marry into like the church community, and we didn't get, like, I just got married and my sister still isn't, and we lived with partners out of wedlock. And I'm actually now trying to process the Christian guilt that I grew up with, because everything that I did also was this subliminal message that you are submissive to a man, and if you tempt a man, it is your fault, but you also have to please a man at the same time. And then all this stuff has made me really think about the patriarchy and what a woman's role is, and the lie that women get uglier and less sexy in their 30s and 40s, where I'm like, well, hang on, actually I feel hotter and sexier now than I did in my 20s.
100%.
So that's a lie, you know? So that's a lie. So yeah, I just had to kind of share that I really resonate with what was going on in your childhood.
I love that. Because, you know, I can feel your energy when you enter the room. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this is this is a confident woman who has worked on herself and is working on
Yeah.
herself. And I'm the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like you never stop learning and
Yeah.
growing and working on
Yeah.
yourself. And I love that. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing.
No, thank you. And so continue going on.
Yeah. So then I was able to leave Thailand. Then I went to school in Finland. And that was the very first time I encountered I guess more of a neutral ground between men and women, boys and girls, because their culture is very egalitarian, very like equality based, like gender equality, and also very body neutral. Because one of the main practices in Finland is using the saunas, and they all get naked, completely naked, to go into the saunas. They don't do like, you know, the towel or the bathing
It's all
suit.
hanging out.
Yeah, just completely naked and go into the saunas, and no one looks at each other because it's just so freaking common.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
why would you
Yeah.
look at anyone, stare at anyone, or like sexualize anyone?
Yeah.
Because if you are young and you're in the sauna with like your grandparents, then it's like it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And when I was there, that is the biggest thing I discovered.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I don't have to feel ashamed of my body when I'm naked, or I have to cover myself, or that I'm sexualized
Yeah.
in some way. It's just a body.
Yeah.
And I love body neutrality even now.
Yeah.
That is how I live my life, because I appreciate body positivity.
Yeah.
However, not every day you're gonna feel like Beyonce.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I don't wake up feeling flawless sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, so I really love
Not
body
even
neutrality.
Beyonce feels like Beyonce every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really love body neutrality and just being grateful for my body, for its functions. So that's kind of my first, like, wow, there's different thoughts in the world. So experiencing thought diversity, something else. That's just not where I'm from.
Yeah.
Is that something you had as well? Like when you
So I
get
think
older?
to be honest with you, I think it's something that I still unfortunately live with. I think that what happened is that being of a Middle Eastern family, like I come from a lot of generational trauma.
Yeah.
My grandmother was Miss Universe. My
Wow.
mother was a model. My grandmother was a narcissist. So my mother suffered a lot from neglect and not feeling good enough. She went on to be a model, but definitely, I think up until really the Kim Kardashian era, Middle Eastern women were also put under a lot of pressure to look a certain way. So, for example,
Yeah, is that
I
like
went-
really skinny or?
yeah, so like I naturally, genetically have always had bigger hips, bigger bum, thicker thighs, all that stuff, you know. And I went to university and I got offered to do some modeling and I did some casting, and I was surrounded by the archetypal Kate Moss type of girl.
Yeah.
That was the beauty standards of the 90s. And, you know, there were comments that you should lose weight, or I'd see the girls pinching their thighs. And I'd never really been introduced. I mean, my parents were also like, oh, in a loving way, you know, like lose a little bit of weight here and there, but that's because of their own conditioning.
Right. Same as my mom.
So I had to shrink myself, and I ended up having an eating disorder in my 20s
Oh, no.
and restrictive eating. And I think at the time I was like, I'm just healthy. And unfortunately, I was given this feedback loop where the more weight I lost, the more praise I'd get. And I think
Oh, like you're so skinny, you look so good.
Correct. And then that for me made me feel a lot of shame around being naked, because number one, I felt like my body didn't look like the other people around me, you know, the 90s
like body
models.
dysmorphia.
Yeah, and I think that also there was shame, right? Because
Right.
for me, imagine this, I actually did not believe in sex before marriage, because that was what was taught to me
Right.
within the realms of Christianity. And I remember my dad, he's a gynecologist. I mean, things have changed, but he sat me down in this pub and he was like, I'm going to show you how babies are made and what happens here. And he's
In
like,
a pub?
you know, imagine he
Oh
took me
my
with
God.
a diagram. And then he turned around and he said, men like women that are virgins, right? And I remember I was like 12.
So even that's misogynistic.
Yeah, but you know, like, and the thing is now it's like, I mean, I ended up asking my dad to help me like with the pill and stuff when I was like 25. But the point is, and we have an open relationship, and I think he also understood that conditioning wasn't realistic for like the
Right.
time we were living in. But that guilt meant for me that I only saw sex as something that was for a man. So
Right.
if a man proves to you that he wants to be in a committed relationship with you or wants to marry you, your gift to him then is sex. That is the psychology I grew up with. Do you see what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So there was nothing about embracing your own body, understanding your own body, pleasuring your own body. That stuff never happened for me during the teens and the 20s.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So that's what happened, like, in answer to your question. But
Yeah. No, I have similar experience with body dysmorphia and like not loving my body, especially in the era. I assume we're the same age because Kate Moss was also kind of our, the archetype of
Typical
like
beauty,
that's the goal, right? Like she's the it girl. She's cool. She's pretty. You want to be like her. And interestingly, on Celebs Go Dating last series, we had Lottie Moss on the show, Kate's little sister, and she said similar things of like, I was comparing myself to her, and like, I have, I don't remember exactly what she said, but along this line of
my body's different.
How we feel. Yeah. It's like, no, we're not Kate Moss.
Yeah.
Which was so interesting how that has affected millions and millions of girls around the world. Because at that point, you were here in England, I was in Thailand, but we're all affected by that body. How insane is that?
I think, though, that's the difficulty. I mean, we'll go on to the social media thing because I don't want to deter too much from it. But if you really think about it, the problem is with trends is that we so heavily invest in what the trends say, and it's so transient, because when Kim Kardashian came along, everyone suddenly was like, I really like your butt. I'm like, I've been told my whole life my butt's too big. And then my mom's generation would still be like, your butt's too big. But then the generation that were like, no, Kim K's come along, she's saying big butts are cool. I'm like, okay, like now everyone wants my butt,
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to say is like, it changes all the time. Like now, like even for men, like I feel sorry for men, like all the time we talk about the patriarchy and misogyny, but to be honest, even for men, the immense amount of body image pressure on a man, like even think about the Finance song, 6'5", blue eyes, you know what I mean? Like now that's what everyone wants.
If you're like short and don't make good money?
Yeah, the thing is like we also have, but it comes and goes, but then someone comes along, I don't know, Tom Holland, who's like not 6'5" and blue eyes, and then everyone's like, oh no, actually, like that's the thing to follow. So I always say like it's so easy to get drawn into the kind of body image trends, and of course we're going to go into it, but like loving your body is really important. But I'd love to understand how the sauna experience kind of helped you further. So so tell me how it changed your perception.
Basically, that's the start of my journey of like discovering the differences in thoughts and ideas and how I can form my own identity. From then on, I went to university. I moved to Los Angeles, went to university. I got my master's.
And what was your master's in?
My master's in human communication, but particularly looking at interpersonal interaction and cross-cultural interaction. So I was always fascinated of people, different cultures interacting, because I know that the world is becoming more and more global, and how can we understand all of these interpersonal conflicts people have from people from different cultures. But I was also studying different relationship aspects. I was studying, the very first paper I published as an academic was when I was a master's student, and I published an article on a study that I did on long distance relationships, because I was then in a long distance relationship and I wanted to research effective strategies in long distance relationships. So I was always researching and studying romantic relationships. But in my PhD, so I moved to Phoenix and I moved to Arizona State University.
Were your parents okay with all this studying, like understanding that you were really exploring the notions of like the human body and relationships? I mean, considering the background that you came from, what you told me, like how were they receptive to the things that you were studying?
Not at the beginning. I think they, for the lack of a better word, I think they wish I was more serious in their standards, right? Like they feel like what I was studying wasn't that serious.
It's typical immigrant mindset. Be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right?
Exactly. Like, why don't you study
medicine?
Medicine, or like even researching something like, public policy, or, why are you studying relationships? But I told them, longitudinal study by Harvard found the most important thing in life is relationships.
Yeah.
Not your career, not money. It's good to have resources, of course. It makes you get all the conveniences, but relationships is the most important thing in life. So why wouldn't I study it? But I went to get my PhD. The last year of my PhD, I was on a job market, and that was really like just a few jobs at that time for a tenure track professor job. At that point, I've always known for the last like 5 years that I would become a professor, because back in my master's degree, my advisor was telling me, like, Tara, for someone who doesn't even speak English as her first language, you're a really good teacher. Because back in the master's degree, I was already teach as an instructor, like a TA. So in the last year of my PhD, I basically applied for these like few jobs that existed during that time, and I basically got all the jobs. I got every job. So then it was about, where do I want to live? I wanted to live in California. I wanted the sunlight. I wanted to be actively dating and, you know, back in the scene. So
how old were you at that point?
27.
Okay.
So I finished early, got my PhD, moved to LA, and then started teaching at Cal State University.
Were you still in this long distance relationship at this point?
No, that was done a long time ago, because I was reading my paper. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing 3 of these 5 things.
Yeah.
So obviously this is not working. But at this point I was single, moved to LA, wanting to be, you know, wanting to be actively dating and find my person. And at the time, I didn't know why I was rushing so hard. But
I know why.
Tell me, because I now know why.
I think I can resonate with that. I mean, I feel like the universe definitely put you on my path, because I've been on my own healing journey. I was conditioned by my parents with love, who've been married and happily married and have loads of sex, by the way, for the last 35 years. And I was conditioned to believe that as a woman, well, number one, from a gynecology point of view, like optimal to have kids kind of pre-30.
Yeah.
So the biological clock. And number two, my dad was like, you know, and like some people might think like, he didn't say this verbatim, but...
It's never verbatim.
Yeah, but like, you know, like too. Men do desire a woman in their 20s, you know?
Yes.
So I think that like, so I went to university, there was all the Christian guilt. I met my first boyfriend when I was 22. He was my first love, the person I lost my virginity to. And then I was like, we're gonna get married. Like, obviously that's the next step. Now, conditioning from Disney and films like The Notebook and whatever. So I thought this is how it happens. You focus on your studies, you go to university, you go into a room and a man picks you. You don't even need to do anything. You need to just be.
A man picks you.
And he picks you. And then he picks you and everything else unfolds. Like the Prince Charming. And I think that is such a touch.
You have children.
You know, I'm happy now that we've got Moana and she like owned her own island. And like, I think like Princess Elsa or whatever it is. Because back then, the thing is, again, what we grew up with was being a princess that is chosen by a prince or rescued by a prince.
Yeah.
So when I broke up with my boyfriend when I was 27, he broke up with me out the blue. Everyone around me was getting married. So my friends were all getting married to who they met in university. Now, once that happened, in my mind, instead of focusing on healing and discovering who I was like, I have 3 years to find a husband. That is my timeline. Now I have 3 years. Don't grieve. Don't be upset. But what you've got to do is that you've got to understand that this is what you've got. Now, I think that was the biggest mistake that I ever made in my entire life, because as we know, happiness is about living in the present. And women will always struggle more than men because of the biological clock.
Yes.
We cannot live in the present if we want to have children. We cannot just date people and see how it goes without intentionality, because it's just more difficult. And I think that is the reality. So for me, and I don't know if it was the same for you, I felt the 30 clock pressure. That was what happened for me.
That's exactly the same as my experience. Like, it's almost like we're the same person.
Mirror.
Yeah, literally. I mean, we got different types of doctorates, but it's the same exactly.
Yeah.
It's like same.
Yeah.
So, you know, my parents giving me those subliminal messages about like, oh, you know, you're in your late 20s. We just want to make sure someone takes care of you. That vibe. And then also all the movies. And then also just myself. And and this is like very personal, but I've always struggled with perfectionism.
Me too, of course.
Just want to come off as perfect.
Yeah.
Want to come off as like, I got
Achiever.
my life together.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing well, got my life together. And not really perfect on the inside but perfect on the outside, right? So like just like you, I didn't spend time healing myself. I spent time looking for a husband.
Right. Husband shopping, I call
And
it.
it was fast. You know, at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm successful. Like I'm now a tenure track professor. I love my job. I have amazing friends. I have an amazing apartment.
This is the missing puzzle.
Yeah, what's next,
yeah.
right? I hop on Tinder and literally found the first person I found and got married to him. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It was, I wouldn't say it was a mistake because I learned a lot from it, but definitely something that it's a huge lesson in my life is I didn't take the time. I ignored all
The red flags?
The red flags. And to be honest, he's a great guy, just not a great guy for me. We weren't compatible, but I ignored everything because he was so great on paper. He was handsome, tall, wealthy. He's a Buddhist, which you don't find a lot of that in LA. And he was really into me. So that's it. Checked all the boxes. Let's get married. We got married in 6 months.
After meeting each other.
Yeah.
And then where did it start to go wrong?
You know, I would say after a year of being married, I had this sense of like guilt that this is not the person for me.
Why?
Two things. First, we didn't have any chemistry. Like that sexual connection, the tension that you get with a person that you're attracted to. I didn't have any of that with him. And now
Not
to
even in the
say this,
beginning?
it just sounds so mean.
Not even the beginning?
No, but I ignored it because he's the perfect person on paper to get married to. He's going to be a good father. He's going to be a good life partner. Fuck sexual connection. We don't need that. Like, let's just get on with it. Have a perfect life. Come on, Tara. You can do this. So that was the...
What was the second thing? You said two things.
Yeah, so that was the first thing. The second thing was, you know, he had a lot of trauma that was unprocessed as well from his life. He had a very difficult life with his family. So for me, you can't have like two people that haven't worked on themselves, like be together.
Yeah.
And
did he act out?
he had a lot of micro behavioral things that I noticed that was like, oh, that's like, it's because of that. Because even when I suggest therapy, he's like, oh no, I don't need that. I even bought him packages to go to therapy. I bought him like a 5 package.
Yeah.
Like he didn't go. He refused to go. He believed he was healed from all these, like, you know, psychedelics and all these journeys he goes on. But it doesn't matter unless you like confront it yourself. Anyways, so that was hard. That was a huge barrier. But also just the fact that we didn't have chemistry was really hard. Because how can you build, like, so there's 2 camps when it comes to sexual attraction.
Okay.
There's the camp of you either have it or you don't. But yes, like things like it's ebbs and flow, right? Like things come and go, but you have to have it from the beginning in order to like build on it and maintain it. There's another camp of people, of scholars who's like, no. They're more logical, like you assess the relationship based on viability, and then sexual connection is just something that you can develop later on in life or whatever, later on in a relationship. And I used to be in that camp, right? Very logical dater, like find a person that checks the box and, you know, matches the papers. And I ignored this part. But however, after studying sexual connection and sexual satisfaction for now a long time, I learned that honestly, the camp of like, you need to have it from the beginning makes way more sense. Especially if you are someone that values sexual connection. Not everyone values sexual connection, and that is completely fine. But if you value sexual connection, you should be in the camp of whether you have it or you don't.
But my question for you is this, is that we often know that those that have that insane sexual chemistry from the beginning.
So that's different.
Yeah, the insane sexual chemistry from the begining when you're like, I want to rip each other's clothes off. And then we know that that ends as quickly as it starts sometimes for people, because that is, it's so solely based on that and the fireworks. And then when real life settles in, like you live with each other, there's problems, you know, whatever, that actually that becomes less important, because other aspects of that human being don't show up in the way that you need them to.
Exactly. So there is two different types of sexual connection, right? There's like healthy sexual connection that actually propels your life, makes you achieve more things. I would say that's what I have now with my now husband is our relationship and our sexuality really propels like
The relationship,
my career. Yeah. We both are more successful. We make more money. We have more friends because of our sexuality.
Yeah.
And it's a huge claim. However, when I was in that previous marriage, I had a very dull life. Even though we were traveling the world and, you know, having a house like that's beachfront property, it doesn't matter because we just didn't have that connection and passion. There's people who says like, oh, you know, you just stick it out. Like, you know, you get everything else. Like you get gifts, you get trips. Like, why not? I'm like, but that's not what I care about, isn't it?
Yeah. So when did it come to an end for you?
Just a couple of years in. I couldn't get a divorce, honestly, because he was struggling so much. Like, you know, there's things that happened with his mom. There's things that happened with his brothers. Like, if I left at the time, I would be like a big bitch. So I stayed and I was the best wife possible. And when it was time, I was like, listen, I can't do this. So
Did you have children?
Divorce. No. So I asked for a divorce. It was really, really hard. Like, because after that day, like I would say at least 2 weeks straight, I wake up crying every morning. And that is a misconception that a lot of people have, is that the person asking for a divorce is like just a big asshole and they don't give a shit. That's not true. A lot of us, I know a lot of people that were the people asking for a divorce really struggle afterwards. And I did 100%.
How did he react?
He was shocked. Yeah, he was shocked. But that just goes to show like that's how well I played the part. How well I was supportive and how well I played the part. He had no idea I was unhappy.
And then how did your healing journey start? And at this point of your career, because obviously I understand, were you already a sex expert within your academia or not at this point?
So at that time, I already started like researching and teaching this class, and this will come into all fruition because this goes back to, okay, I was in this marriage. We didn't have sex, right? But I go to school and I teach about sexual satisfaction and I talk about sexual communication and I talk about accepting who you are and your sexuality. And I personally did not have that at home. And I felt so ashamed because I'm just like a big fake at this point. You know, I didn't have all the shit I have that I, you know, preach about at school and teaching all these university students. I was just teaching them theoretically, but I don't walk the walk. I just talk the talk. And I've always hated people like that. I've always hated people that just talk the talk and don't walk the walk. And I just hated myself. And all of that contributed to just me being so unhappy in that marriage. And
was he, because if you weren't having sex, like, was that not affecting him?
It was, but at the same time, it wasn't like we were not jiving like sexually well enough to be like initiating that process of like, what can we do to even make this sex better? Just because like we never had chemistry. And chemistry is, it's, you know this, like you're a woman of science. Chemistry is something you have or you don't.
So I was having a conversation with my coach. I'm really invested in my sort of healing journey with my therapy and my coach. And again, like, I really want to delve into this with you. There are people that you have chemistry with, but the chemistry is literally a dopamine endorphin response. And it is also biological because this person makes you want to reproduce, and it could be because their physical features, right? Yeah. And also on top of that, like, I think that I was trying to work out that sometimes those hormones make me feel really anxious. So it makes me feel anxious and alive at the same time. And I think it's chemistry. And sometimes I actually crave safety, and safety is a little bit more boring, if that makes sense, because safety
But see, I think that's not true.
Okay.
I think that's not true, because when we look at research of long-term couples who do have high sexual satisfaction, it's not just about chemistry. It's about connection. It's about having a healthy relationship. It's about being communicative, expressive, loving who you are so you can show up as 100%. You don't need this person. You want them.
Yeah.
You crave them. You want them. And I think the fact that there is this narrative of like, when you get married, life is just going to be boring and you should accept it. It's like, I think it's bullshit.
Yeah,
I think it's bullshit, and it's conditioning people to want a mediocre life.
I think though, but I do think there is something to be said for the fact that some people are also used to chaos, and chaos is like if chaos is familiar to you, you might seek that out in relationships.
Yeah, it's
and
very
chaos,
toxic.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, I think that's where like one needs to be careful, because that toxicity makes you feel alive, but it's not necessarily good for you. Do you see what I mean? You know? So I think like that's a really important thing. But yeah, I think chemistry is a really interesting one.
No, it's just one factor of a healthy relationship, right? There's like 20 different factors, right? When we look at research, there's so many other things like communication, personality, compatibility. There's interest compatibility, like so many things, even family compatibility. So chemistry is one of them. Whether or not it affects you heavily, it depends on what you value in a relationship. For me, I did not know at the time that I value passion so much, and that it propels my whole life, every aspect of my life. And so with my current husband, we met on the plane.
So hold on. So you went on your healing journey. So you got divorced. Then what happened?
No, I went on my healing journey even before I got a divorce. My healing journey led me to getting a divorce. Yeah, it really gave me.
So did you just gain that clarity on your own? And you were like, you came home one day and you were like, I'm going to have the conversation.
Yes, it was really hard. I was like in an Uber calling my girlfriends like, shit, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And it was just so scary. Yeah. That was the scariest thing I did in my life.
So you woke up every day crying for 2 weeks. Then what happened?
Just like, you know, continuing on with my healing journey. At that point, I have already started my healing journey like a year and a half ago, right? So I continue on doing all my practices, self-affirmations, journaling, meditation. I meditate every single day, making sure I spend time with friends that are healthy, that don't judge me, that, right? Like making sure I focus on my career and making sure I focus on my physical health, exercising and talking to my coach.
Was dating again, was it
hard?
Was it on your radar at that point? Or were you like, no, I just want to focus on me?
No, I was fine. Because, you know, actually, what I learned is there is this narrative of like, you should fix yourself first before you date someone. But that's not true. Like, you can work on yourselves together as long as both of you have growth mindset. Yeah. And actually having a supporter in your life helps you accelerate that healing process, like so much. So for me, I was fine. Like, I was open to receiving love to the universe. I tell the universe, like, if there's love that's
send
passionate,
it to me.
that's like, I'm here for it. So anyways, really long story short, I've been, ever since my now husband and I started dating,
you met on a plane?
Yeah. And so we were friends at first, and then when we started, you know, developing kind of romantic feelings, we tell each other like we're gonna try to make this as easy, and because we were both focusing on our careers, we're trying to make this as easy as possible. So fun fact, we actually started as like friends with benefit.
Yeah, wow.
We started as like a fuck buddy.
Yeah,
because I love multiple orgasms. Not gonna lie, and he's attractive, and he is the same, and we both love our careers, and we wanted to focus on that. So we started with just like fooling around and having that friendship, and we had such good friendships. We would cook together. We would talk about life and philosophy, and I don't know a lot of people that can like make me come 4 times and then talk about Marxism and like cooks me dinner. So it was amazing. Like that friendship really is the foundation of our relationship. And he loved my career versus my ex-husband was always kind of icky about me being so upfront about sex. So this really helped me embrace who I am. And plus I was heavily working on myself continuously, relentlessly, and I'm like you, obsessed with just working on myself. So at that point, when we started like, okay, we think we want to be in a committed relationship.
How long did that take?
Like a year and a half. Then we...
And were you also exploring other partners at the same time?
Yeah. We were very upfront. Like, we love our time together, but when we're not together, it's like our prerogative to however we want to conduct our lives. But then we started being in a relationship. We had a conversation. Like, this relationship is such an adult relationship. Like, we had a conversation along the way. But when we started the relationship, I told him, sexual exploration is my top 3 values in life. And we will never go away. I'll be like 65 and wanting to like explore something. So I told him, like, I'm someone that explore sexually. I'm someone that goes to like sex parties. I just want you to know. And I desire a monogamish relationship, not a monogamous relationship. I don't desire a traditional relationship. And at that point, he was like, I completely understand. I'm not there yet mentally, but I think I will be, because I'm very open to that and I'm curious. So not right now, but yes, in the future. So we were monogamous at the beginning for up until like only a year ago.
And are you guys now open?
We are not open. We're monogamish. Which is different.
What's monogamish?
So monogamish is like 95% monogamous. It's just like a regular relationship, because people always ask like, oh my god, do you guys have crazy days and nights? I'm like, no, every day is the same as you guys. We have each other. We're emotionally committed, romantically committed. We talk all the time. We support each other. We have shared finances. We're like just a regular married couple.
But if you have another connection with someone else, do you kind of explore it? Is that how it works?
No.
Okay.
So except for sexual exploration. So we see sex as recreational rather than something sacred between married couples.
Okay, fine.
So for us, sex isn't related to faith or religion. Because a lot of people think that sex should only be with their committed partner, because it is attached to some teachings, isn't it? Like, how did you come up with this idea? Like, let's say you weren't taught this idea. Would you have thought that you only have to have sex with one person?
It's a stupid concept.
But it came from somewhere.
Same with marriage though, right?
Yeah. Well, marriage for me, it's a financial situation.
But this is, this
insurance.
But like, this is the crazy thing, because I think, like, to be honest with you, like, I really wasn't that bothered about marriage. I kind of, like, my parents put it, and then when I thought about it, I was like, and then when I started like reading the paperwork, I'm like, what is this? Like, it's like an old, outdone agreement. And people are like, oh, but it's the union of two souls. I'm like, but why do you have to make it legal? I don't get it. Like, if you are a woman with your shit together and a man with his shit together, what is the point? Like, as in, like, you can do the union of love on a beach. You can like celebrate it with your friends. Like, why do you have to make this whole legal debacle about it? Like, I'm not here to marry someone for their money, and like, I don't think he's here to marry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I found the whole thing a bit weird, like, really understanding it,
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I wrote a whole textbook about like development of like sex and relationship and marriages. So it's like, obviously in the past it makes a lot of sense, because women couldn't have a bank account. Like, of course you want to get married. Of course you want alimony. Of course you want alimony when you get dumped by your husband cheating on you because you didn't work, you didn't have a bank account. So it makes total sense back in the days. Nowadays, like you said, doesn't make so much sense. However, if people still feel like, oh my god, it's like this union of souls, it's okay, it's like everybody's prerogative. However, I do think that in a marriage, you can do what the F ever you want. And that's the thing, is people live in this constraint, like, box of rules, which is, obviously social and cultural norms of what is okay, what's not okay when it comes to how people conduct themselves in a romantic relation, in a marriage, and in their sexual relationship. So for me, I told my husband, was like, listen, we're gonna go to sex parties, right? Like, we're gonna be exploring, because we both love exploring. We're curious sexual individuals. And he's like, yes, we will. Not right now. So we were monogamous until we were not. And then we started exploring as a monogamish couple, a monogamish married couple. So we're 95% of the time, just like everyone else, we have a normal life. And then 5% of the time is the times where we go to like sex parties and we explore with other people. And sex for us is recreational. It's fun. It's exciting. It's taboo, it's dirty. It allows us to like have this like kind of almost like a double life of whatever we do, right? So that's just the monogamish part. But other than that, it's just like a regular relationship, really. It's not really scary or crazy. It's just once in a while we go to sex parties and do crazy things.
I love that for you. Now, There's some other stuff because I just want to refresh my memory. Okay, so how did you... Okay, so I want to share you as well. You talked about your book, Sexual Communication, Research and Action, yeah? It's been extremely influential, but I want you to share perhaps some of your key messages from that book.
Yes. So that is a textbook. Like it's for university.
Yeah.
Right? I'm coming out with actually my own book next year.
Yeah.
But that's a textbook. So the key messages in that textbook would be, number one, sexual knowledge is power. Without sexual knowledge, you're unable to understand your own sexuality, accept it, and accepting other people. Number two, a lot of your own sexual fulfillment and satisfaction comes from yourself, which is a misconception that like someone gives you pleasure. No, you need to even have the capacity to have pleasure.
What do you mean by masturbation in that point, or like more like how would you when you want to give yourself your own pleasure, how do you mean that specifically?
Sexual mindfulness.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a huge concept that we talk about in the textbook, but also I talk about that constantly. I talk about it in my TED Talk. I talk about it in like every podcast I go on because it's free, but yet it's not like PSA around the world, right? Because it's not pharmaceutical. People don't make money from meditation. And you know, it's not a money making machine. So it's not getting promoted and or endorsed that much. So I take it my job to tell people about it.
Yeah.
So sexual mindfulness is the ability to stay present, focused, and non-judgmental during any kind of sexual activity, including self-pleasure and partner pleasure.
Okay.
The crazy thing is most people don't have it. Most people can't be mindful. It's either they're judging themselves, judging their partner, thinking about something else, like having, you know, intrusive thoughts, or they have this repressed shame that haven't been processed. So sexual mindfulness is really the key to a long-lasting, happy sex life because it's like the very foundation of a house. You can't build a house on, you know, unstable soil, right? So without sexual mindfulness, like, yes, you can, you know, have a partner who has a sizable package and knows how to use it and this and that, have chemistry. But at the same time, you're consistently thinking about, oh my God, am I a slut for fucking this person? Am I, you know, all the things that stop you from being present in that moment and enjoying the pleasure in the sensations in your body. That's the biggest enemy.
But do you not think that women will always have, I mean, I think it's changing more, and I know that you work a lot with like Gen Z, which is super interesting to me, and perhaps it's changing. But do you not think the guilt and the shame within the female sphere is still something that is massively prevalent?
Yeah.
Particularly amongst certain religions. You know, we've touched on some, but there are literally some religions that are like, you cannot tempt a man. Like, it is, you cover up because you tempt a man.
There's still religion that you cover the whole body except the eyes.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, do you not think that there is still so far to go? I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable having these conversations. I mean, even when we did the podcast with Emma, Payman and I, my co-host who's not here, I was like, oh my God, like, what are people going to say? Because we knew that dentistry is dominated by certain ethnic minorities. And are they going to be like, what the hell are they doing having these conversations? And I don't mean to be like judgmental, but I think there is certainly something to be said. I still think that, you know, female empowerment, female sexuality, and being able to be mindful within certain activities is still really difficult.
Yeah.
But what's your perception? Do you not think we've got really far to go? And do you think Gen Z are setting us different precedents?
Yeah, I think so. So, number one, I do agree with you. We have a lot more to go, right? And we still have a long journey. However, it's been changing so much. Even when I started my career as a sexologist 10 years ago, until now, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different, right? And so given like another 10 years, 15 years, I think we're going to see huge changes.
Yeah.
I've seen Gen Zs, my students, right? University students nowadays is like Gen Zs. And soon enough, we'll have Gen Alpha, the next generation.
Yeah.
But I can see Gen Zs, even though there's this statistic that people often cite about like Gen Z is not having sex. If you really look into that data, It was collected in 2021. It was COVID. No one is fucking. So it's not just Gen Z. Like, you'd have to look at these data too. Like, when was it collected? Of course they're not having sex. They're on Zoom.
Yeah.
So they are having sex, and they're actually very accepting of all kinds of sexuality, sexual orientation, sexual exploration. They're more accepting to ideas that are non-traditional. Like, for example, right, prostate massage, or like anal sex, or like butt play. Like, you know, for men, it's so like, oh my god, no, that's so gay, right? Especially if you ask older individuals. But like, not Gen Zs. They're like, pleasure is pleasure, body parts are body parts, it has no sexual orientation.
But having spoken about that generation and porn, now there is interestingly, my partner gave me a book called The Anxious Generation. It's a book that he's obsessed with me rereading. I've just started it. And it's about how technology has impacted
100%,
everyone. And he thinks it's like literally the source of all evil, because the statistics show, the researcher, I'm sure you know of him, I forgot his name now, that he's done lots of TED Talks. He basically shows it statistically. He's like, no, this is not just hearsay, because people are like, oh, the generation's getting more depressed because of like the conflict in the Middle East, or because of like the fact that there's been a massive recession. And he's like, no, I have the data. Like, social media has a huge hard part to play in anorexia, body image, etc. And obviously the big thing for guys was porn addiction and the inability of young men to be able to talk to women. But what do you think, what is your view on the porn industry and the part that porn has had to play on the younger generation?
Oof. Okay. So we have to first not generalize all porn.
Yeah.
Because not all porn is bad. There are bad porn and there are good porn. And there are companies that work really hard in being transparent in producing these, we call erotic films. These are like art. Yeah, it is pleasure. Yeah, it is kinky and taboo. But at the same time, it was produced ethically. So we call this genre ethical porn. And it's not produced to be addictive. It's not produced to show violence on women that are non-consensual. It's not produced by sexist pigs. It's not produced where all these performers are not paid enough, right? Like, these are consensual individuals having fun, kinky sex because they want to and they get paid for it, and it's made as an erotic film. So there's ethical porn. There's also ethical audio porn, right? There's big companies that do audio porn. So there's that genre of porn where if individuals and couples use it in a regulated way, actually has positive effects in their lives. We have seen in research where individuals that feel like they can't have a quote unquote normal sex life, aka like disabled people, for example, whether it's a seen disability or unseen disability, something you can't see, people still feel like they still get sexual satisfaction from watching porn. And that's just like one benefit for a big group of people, right? But there's also research that shows couples that watch porn together like once a while as a strategy in bringing excitement and novelty to their sex life have a better sex life.
Yeah.
So there's those benefits that we can't forget. However, there are a lot of bad porn, right? Because the industry for the longest time had gatekeepers of these powerful men who were gatekeepers, who were really just like 3-4 big porn producing houses that were producing all these videos. And a lot of them were sexist. A lot of them didn't pay the performers well. A lot of them, it's just made in a way that to be addictive, to be, violence on women that are uncalled for. So there are bad porn. And there are people who rely on porn quite relentlessly in their whatever pleasure journey. But interestingly, porn addiction isn't a diagnosable like condition. There's no porn addiction like in the textbook. Yeah. Like there is,
sex addiction, though there is.
Overconsumption. Yeah, there's overconsumption of porn, and anyone can be, a victim of that. And at the end of the day, I think it's kind of like, have you ever gone hunting?
hunting in London, not London, in England.
Yeah.
As in like for animals.
Because like people do that, right?
There's like a whole tradition of like people shooting and stuff like that, and like, yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, I've never engaged in those activities. I mean, in the UK, I guess, I'm so not a country girl. Like, you know, you can see here.
But it is like one of traditions.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've seen Downton Abbey.
Yeah. It is a tradition.
Right.
Yeah, and like definitely like my university friends got involved in that.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, it's like guns in that sense, right? Like, is it the person, you know, is it like porn exists? It exists. Like we can't make it go away unless the legislation changes. But it exists. How you use it is in your power.
Yeah.
So for me to blame porn for your problems is kind of like,
I think though, like, look,
You know?
I've had loads of conversations, and I don't want to give him lots of airtime, but like I have loads of about the rise of like male misogyny online, particularly when it comes to certain influencers. Andrew Tate, we know that. But I think that what troubles me the most is that we've had such an incredible narrative of men essentially subtly hating women, and I think that message comes across quite strong. And the thing is that I'm also not part of the camp that's like, women should rule the world. I really think that the problem is that we have not found a way to collaborate instead of actually separating ourselves. And I think the kind of like the internalized misogyny of some men, but also the actual fact that a lot of female hate men is really not helping our environment and our progression.
no.
I have an amazing relationship with men. I know that I'm really lucky. I absolutely love my dad. He was my king. He was the best dad, the best husband, still is, okay? He actually set an unrealistic expectation, because when I started dating after my first boyfriend, I was like, why are men so shit? Like, it really shocked me that some men can behave that way. But I genuinely had no problem like asserting boundaries. There have been a few instances in the last 5 years of my life where I was like, oh wow, that was actually misogynistic, you know, or I think particularly in the workplace, I've recognized, I'm like, no, why haven't women given opportunity? Why is there a conference and not a single female? Why haven't, you know, and there's certain like things like that where I'm like, okay, I can see it. But I've never felt hugely threatened. And I don't want to say this lightly, because I know that people say, how can you say that women don't even feel safe to kind of get into an Uber late at night, walk at home at night? I know that these are massive realities. But I also think that if we're going to progress in the world, it's not about doing only female conferences or only male clubs. Like, I think collaboration is beautiful, and that's where we're really going to find that happy medium. That's the thing that I think is really important. And actually, I like a balance of energies. I like some men around and some women around. I like that balance of energy. But I think the rise of toxic masculinity online has become a problem, only because when I suddenly find a 13-year-old boy and his friends like attacking a video because Andrew Tate might have said that something that I was saying was really offensive when it's not, that's when I think it becomes a problem, because we are not having the right people influencing. And I feel sorry, because I feel like there is a generation of young men that do not have good role models. That's my view online particularly.
You're right. And honestly, it's been like this every generation. Like even our generation, you're a millennial, right? Even our generation, or even a generation before, there's always been, people have always had some bad role models. It's just that now it's amplified due to social media, right? So social media does give a lot of opportunity to a lot of people, right? To democratize like money, to give them opportunity to be heard and to organize, right? Like people have organized, you know, protests or like whatever they are passionate about. There's people that, you know, got a record deal from singing on TikTok. Right? Like it's
crazy.
It's definitely an amazing tool in that sense. It gives so many people opportunities and destroys gatekeepers. Which is really, gatekeepers are problematic, right? However, just like porn, right? Like the internet or social media is also a place where there's so much misinformation and bad information. And when you are not literate, or you don't have like the emotional intelligence or critical thinking, then of course you're going to fall for narratives that are I would say like soothing to you.
Yeah.
Because you know his narrative is like, it's not your fault that like that no one likes you.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, fuck these bitches,
Yeah.
right? Like so for me it's the fact that these kids lack community, love, understanding, acceptance, and critical thinking elsewhere.
Yeah.
And therefore get succumbed to these narratives very easily, right? But that's like not the internet's problem to me. That's the family problem.
Well, this is the thing. People crave community and love. And I always say, if anyone wants to watch a film that was so powerful, it was made by my friend. It's called You Resemble Me.
Ooh,
and
gotta watch it.
It is about the female suicide bomber in Paris when the whole Je suis Charlie thing was going on. Anyways, it turned out it was all fake news. She wasn't the first female suicide bomber. My friend that made the film, it's incredible. She went on a journey because when she was working for Vice, she got asked to interview the mother, and the mother only let my friend in because she looked like the daughter, hence the film You Resemble Me. She recognized how the media was perpetuating all this fake news. Then she created this whole beautiful film about the childhood of this female suicide bomber. Children are not born saying, I want to join ISIS. It is a segregated part of community that doesn't have love, was part of the French racist system, that came from an abusive alcoholic home, that was separated from her sister and gone from foster care to foster care. So guess what? When a community comes along and it's like, we're going to give you love, we're going to give you affection, we're going to give you a job, we're going to give you security. That's why she joins ISIS. Not because she wants to bomb the world. Do you see what I mean? And I'm 100%. Not excusing, but this is the thing. Like we need
everyone come from somewhere.
Correct. And we need to understand, like you said, what is their childhood? What is their conditioning? What support do we have? My guest a couple of weeks ago from America, he used to be an addict, a drug addict. And he was like, addicts are sent to prison. They're not offered help. What if we offer them help first? You know, when they did that in Portugal, you know, they had Portugal at one point had one of the biggest problems with heroin. They said, okay, cool, we're going to actually give you the heroin. So there were hubs, but in those hubs,
that's so radical. Yeah, I love it.
But they had doctors and they had an opportunity for you to get clean, and then they reduced the numbers by like to a third or something because
that's very interesting.
The addiction. Why? Because they offered those people help. Do you see what I mean? You know, so I think that's really important. I want to ask you as well about your TED Talk. So tell me, how did the TED Talk come about? What was it about? I didn't have an opportunity to watch it. So tell me.
Okay. So it's ultimately it's a talk about sexual empowerment. It's briefly about my story coming from so much sexual shame to now basically celebrating my sexuality and talking about it unapologetically to everybody. But the data behind it is based on my study that was looking at intrapersonal variables that predict long-term sexual satisfaction. I surveyed 5,000 people.
Wow.
I really wanted that redundancy in data. Like I wanted to make sure it's not just like 100 people, right? Like I surveyed 5,000 people. I collected data over the 2-year period and ran statistics on like these different variables to see what are significant predictors of long-term sexual satisfaction. And this will come full circle. The number one predictor of sexual satisfaction is sexual communication.
So that's speaking during sex or?
Speaking about sex. Talking about sex in your relationship. A lot of people don't talk about sex in their relationship, and then one day they explode because one person cheated on another person, and then they go, what went wrong? Well, you've never talked about it. You know, you've always had issues, but you didn't talk about it. So the number one is sexual communication. The number two is sexual self-esteem, which is very much the same as sexual confidence. Sexual confidence is external, is what you express. Sexual self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. And then thirdly is sexual mindfulness. So these three variables, powerful intrapersonal communication variables that predict long-term sexual satisfaction. These three variables are the things that you can do. These three are in your hands. You have the power to do all these three and have an amazing, a healthy, good sex life if you decide to do them.
So I want to delve a little bit more into relationships, because this is really interesting to me. Do you believe there is such thing as a soulmate?
Yeah.
And one soulmate only?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little more, expand.
I read a lot about Eastern philosophy. I think for me, I am really my whole, belief system, my persona, what I stand for, everything is a marriage of Eastern and Western philosophy. Because I'm from the East. I was taught all the Eastern philosophies. I'm a Buddhist. My mom doesn't believe in Western medicine, always make me these weird, bitter broth.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of Eastern philosophies in me, but then I was trained and taught in the Western world. So I'm a marriage
Me
of
too.
both. Yeah, yeah. I think that's why we connect so well and have spicy conversation. Is because we're similar. So for me, the discussion of soulmates is taught actually a lot in the Eastern world, and it's not that you are connected to just one and the only one person. It's you're connected to a bunch of different people that you've met in your past life. Because
So
Buddhism,
you believe there was a past life?
right? Because in Buddhism, there's reincarnation,
yeah.
and even this life, when you die, you're going to reincarnate to be someone or something. And so your soulmates are the people that you had met in your past life, and something happened. It bonded you together, and you will always meet them.
Yeah.
So you meet them now, you'll meet them in your next life.
I was listening to a really great podcast with Sarah El-Madini. I don't know if you know her. She's the one. And she was talking about twin flames. And she was saying that either your twin flame is your mirror or your partner. It's not necessarily someone you end up with. And maybe as your mirror, they come, they teach you something, and then they go. It doesn't mean they have to be your partner for life.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting, because I think that we can have lots of different soulmates and people for different reasons. So I think that that's really important. Now, do you think that...
I have a question for you, actually. So you believe in soulmates. Are you with your soulmate now?
So this is really interesting. So let me tell you a little bit about me and my partner. He's possibly one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my entire life.
Love that.
He's incredible. He had a different past life to me, so dare I say he's a man in finance, but he definitely had a very hedonistic life. That's completely opposite to me. When we first dated, we had gone on 5 dates, and I very much got the impression that he was emotionally unavailable. And I was on husband shopping duty, because I was
you had your checklist.
We reconnected because actually I was going to Burning Man and I needed advice on a camp. And then he said to me hey, why don't I help you? Now, emotionally unavailable men, I love an avoidant. I love an avoidant. So I was super attracted to him. I was super and he was very much he was your kind of Euro, kind of very, he's got his shit together, but he has that kind of I'll take a boat in Greece. He's Greek, right?
Yeah.
And I loved that. And it was all very intriguing. When I came back from Burning Man, that was about a year later, after we had first dated. He was do you want to meet again? And he actually asked for a second chance. And in his second chance, he said to me, he'd done some work. He actually went celibate for a bit. And this is the interesting thing. I think that he thought that he was constantly trying to get a high from new experiences. So new partners every weekend, and the parties, constant dopamine.
Yeah.
And that, I think, couldn't allow him to be in a monogamous relationship. He actually at one point thought he didn't believe in monogamy. And then his father passed away. And when his father passed away suddenly, the importance of family, I think, initiated something in him when he was actually, I want a family.
Yeah.
Because it was the siblings looking after each other, the legacy that was left. You see what I mean? All these different things. So when he came back, I was in a different mindset. I was I want to kind of go on my own healing journey. And I think that he's been a soulmate. Has he been my only soulmate in life? No, I think I've had a few soulmates. And that's
How long have you been together?
6 years.
And are you married?
Yeah.
And because you didn't believe in marriage.
Yeah, and I think
when you got married, what's the rationale?
So I think that, my God, this is deep and personal.
Yeah.
So we didn't really care, as in like we had the conversation about like I don't really care. Like I felt like I got to that stage where, as I said, like I was like I wanted to do it before I was 30 to hit a box and show everybody and take the photos. And then I was like in my 30s and I was like I don't care. Pandemic hit. I was like at the height of like my career like booming and all that stuff. And I think that we had talked about, but my father was like, I don't want a baby out of wedlock. It meant a lot to him and his family. So I think it was a more like the honoring, like he wanted to kind of honor
it for your family.
I kind of like the engagement bit of it more than the actual, like, I was like, I like the fact that somebody's like, hey, like you're mine, and the gesture, you know. But like, it was just, I think when I started seeing the paperwork, it really made me start thinking about patriarchy and what was the point. And like, I didn't understand, because even if we did it like on a beach with a shaman, I think it would have felt more in alignment, if I'm honest.
Right.
It was the whole
but
like,
you could have had that too.
Yeah, and I think we might later on. But I think it was the whole like
your vow renewal.
So we did like the whole like civil type thing of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that like what he's really allowed me is that I've been just like you on a healing journey, I think for the past 10 years, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's really fucking hard, because you're like, I want a complete healing. I want a complete healing.
I know,
and then you realize
like it's just a
lifelong
journey. Yeah.
And I think like what's really important is like he's really open. He's allowed me to be me. And I think like, as you said, as strong, empowered women, that's really, really important, because I was in a really hideous, controlling relationship before him with a narcissist. And I remember dulling my shine, dulling my light, isolating my friends. And it's really hard when you're naturally a very strong woman to kind of be. What I'm trying to get into alignment now is the construct of marriage seems really boring for me. And it shouldn't be, because my partner isn't boring and my life is very exciting. But I think what I see around me and the conventionality does not align to me.
Right.
But that's when my coach is like, you want to take your kids to Burning Man? You take your kids to Burning Man. Like, you make marriage what you want it to be.
Exactly.
That's why it's very refreshing to hear from you what you want to. But we have had open conversations, because what I have said to him, unlike you, I have never got to explore my sexuality because of the shame. Sure, I can explore it with him, but also you might argue and say, and I think this is the battle, there is a difference between doing it with one person versus multiple people, because also you don't know any different. Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's so much to explore just with him. I mean, have you tried BDSM?
No, like, and this is the thing, like, like, this is the thing, like, I'm gonna like book a session with you to kind of like go through that.
But
you know, like, it was
so much to try.
But
it
was really interesting, because I was, when we first met, he was like, I'd love to take you to a shibari class. And I was like, I'm not a slut.
No,
what are you talking about? You know? So
did you try?
No, we didn't try it. So like, this might be like the next, this might be the next thing. Now, you're obviously in the UK to be working on Celebs Go Dating. I want to know, what has been your most surprising or memorable experience working on Celebs Go Dating?
Ooh, I would say the most surprising is how real those therapy sessions are. When you watch reality TV, you just kind of think like, oh, they just do like hit the beat, and like that's it, right? Because like when you watch, you know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, it just all looks kind of fake. Like they prepared for this. But on Celebs Go Dating, when the celebrities come into our agency, sit in the couch with me and another expert, and we conduct these sessions, they're very much like my regular session in my private practice in LA. Is we're trying to help you. We have to investigate from the beginning your past relationships, your family.
Are you a qualified therapist as well?
No, I'm a professor.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm a professor. So my private practice isn't therapy practice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a coaching practice.
Fine. Okay.
So we have a goal to get to. We investigate, make a plan, get to the goal, versus healing from the past, right? Therapy is healing from the past. Coaching is having a goal, and how do we meet the goal?
Okay, so I've got a question for you.
So I have both. I have a therapist and I have a coach.
So you said to me earlier that, for example, like, so say you've got a client that comes in, and then the client's like, because I'm trying to understand like the difference between the therapy and the coaching. So say you have a client that comes in, and then she says to you like, I have a husband, I've been in with for him 20 years, and I really love him, and we have kids, and everything is great, and a bit like the scenario you were in, but actually I think my sex life has never been that great. Would you advise them to leave? Do you see what I mean? In the same way that you left, you know, because as you said, one of your highest goals was sexual satisfaction, or would you encourage them to maybe work on it within the relationship?
My go-to is work on it.
Okay.
Yeah, my
fine.
go-to is work on it. However, I have assessments.
Yeah.
So I have them do the assessments. If one of their top values is sexual connection and
it's not being met.
yeah, and it's not being met, like I'm gonna tell them the truth. It's this shit is gonna be hard.
Yeah.
And you may have to leave him afterwards.
Yeah.
But we can try first.
Yeah.
However, if they do the assessment and their sexual connection is like number 10 out of, you know, then it's not a problem. When it's not a problem, why fix it?
Yeah.
Like if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. You don't have to compare to your friend who like have sex 6 days a week, right? It's okay you have sex once a month. Like if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like you cannot ever compare your sex life to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like fuck your friends that say like, you know, oh my god, we have sex like 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Oh, we just have the most amazing sex life. Like, yeah, that's amazing sex life for her. Maybe not for you. Maybe for you it's like once a week.
Yeah.
Maybe for you it's once in every 2 weeks, but it's really connected and you really spend the time. Maybe for you it's quickies 3 times a week and a long session once a month.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like it's whatever you make it to be. And I guess the moral of the story of everything that we just talked about is like you design your own life.
Yeah, I love that.
And social conditioning, cultural norms, social norms, expectations, these things kill you. They kill you.
But did you lose a lot of friends and family along the way?
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's okay. I was very close with my ex-husband's family. Of course, you know, not in contact with any of them anymore. And that was really sad. That was really a huge part of cutting that cord. It's like, I'm not just cutting one cord, isn't it? Like I'm cutting all the cords.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. A few friends that I became really close with through, you know, mutual friends in our marriage. Like all of those I had to, you know, kind of regulate, like, because we're all still friends. How do we show up in places where he's not there, I'm not there? So yeah, like, but at the same time, I wouldn't change a thing. Like currently my life is 10 out of 10. My sex life is 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I haven't seen my husband for like 2.5 weeks, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I will see him soon. But you know what I mean? Like I think because I embrace who I am and my values and my desires, and don't think that I'm a bad person for wanting something non-traditional, finally I get to live
the life you
and
want.
Finally people see it. And even though they don't want the same life as me, a lot of people don't want the same life as me, they still follow me and still love the messages I give. It's because it gives them permission to be themselves. And when it's non-traditional, not just in sex ways, like in other ways, they feel accepted by me because I accept myself.
Yeah, no, I really love that, because I've seen your TikTok, I've seen a huge following as well. I mean, with this social media, the rise of social media, how did that happen?
Honestly, I think it's just because I don't give a fuck. And
was this in the last 5 years, the rise?
It's just the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And it was just organic. You were like, I'm going to put this content out.
All organic. I have never bought any followers, never like paid for anything. All organic. Anything I paid for was actually my team. I paid for a team that puts out content 24/7.
Yeah, I have that with
so
my
I
TikTok.
definitely paid for that.
Yeah.
But really, I think people were craving sex education because sex positivity was on the rise. A few years ago, a TV show called Sex Education in the UK started.
I remember. It was really popular,
I was in LA and it's huge in LA.
Yeah.
So I knew, and then Euphoria came, and then, you know, all the shows that really highlight sex positivity and not being ashamed of your sexuality came. So with that rise of sex positivity in the media, I was like, oh, okay, like the world is ready for something like this. And at the same time, my students in the university were really encouraging me. They were like, you're so funny. You should have a social media account. At that time, I didn't have.
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, I started TikTok, Instagram, and just start putting out content.
Yeah.
And like 2 years later, I hit 2 million followers. And then, you know, Celebs Go Dating, like the casting people reach out. They want a sex expert on the show.
Yeah.
I get to do this show.
It broadened your opportunities, which is what I found as well. I mean, before the rise of social media, I was like turning up to like TV studios and journalists' office, and I was like, you're going to write about dentistry. I mean, dentistry is less sexy than sex, but you know what I mean?
Very important though.
Yeah.
It's a huge self-confidence factor, isn't it? Having nice teeth.
Yeah, so, but I definitely pitched it out to the media, and I think there was like, you know, the rise of denfluencers, you know, became like a big thing.
Oh my God, denfluence!
Yeah, there we go. And like, you know, today I got a phone call from a big kind of like morning TV show. Like I've done like a lot of documentaries and TV shows and things like that. Like I think social media has been great, but I think like really importantly is like understanding your messaging. And I think for me, messaging in terms of like an educative point of view is really, really important. Am I hearing you correctly in that really what you want your audience to gain above all education is the empowerment to be who you want to be without shame and guilt?
Exactly.
That's your message, right?
Yeah.
So I've got another relationship question before we wrap up as well. You had brought this up. I had got really obsessed with Esther Perel. Esther Perel was definitely like a female that helped the female empowerment journey. And I think her reframing of infidelity is extremely powerful, although there is so much shame and guilt. And of course, I'm saying you should never have that go out intending to hurt another human being. You know, that's not the whole point. But I think infidelity is an extremely complex subject. And I noticed that you said, you know, like, you brought up the whole sexual aspect, that some partners cheat because of a certain like sexual need not being met. We know there's emotional.
Research found that's
one of the
top 3 reasons.
So what is the one of the top 3 reasons for infidelity?
Sex.
Yeah.
Lack of attention and interest from their partner. And not just about sex, just lack of attention in general.
Emotional.
And then third is, you know, there's always going to be shitty reasons, right? Like it's
cheating.
They want like extra validation, but that's their problem. You know, that's their personal problem, that instead of fixing through like therapy and wellness, they chose quick external validation from cheating with someone that's quote unquote into them. So there's all these reasons. However, just a disclaimer, like I would never blame people that get cheated on, right? And it is still important to understand that in every scenario, it takes 2 to tango, especially when it comes to relationships. So you can't really excuse yourself completely out of the equation and completely 100% blame the person that did the deed, because even though if it's 10% of contributing to the factor, or if it's 50% or whatever, you're still there. And the fact that your partner isn't comfortable enough to have a conversation, that they're unhappy, that the reason why they engage in infidelity, the fact that they weren't comfortable enough to have this conversation, it tells me that your relationship is unhealthy. If you cannot communicate your true feelings, your relationship is unhealthy. And when the relationship is unhealthy, it's usually not because of one person. It's because of 2 people. So I think what has been interesting, I had a conversation with an amazing friend on Saturday who's the mother of 4 children. She went from 1 to being pregnant with triplets. Yeah, I know, naturally. Wow.
And then she told me that she found out that her partner was cheating. She said that the marriage became difficult when more children came. And I hear that a lot. I hear that the children's side of things can really kill the sex. And whilst I understand that it takes 2 to tango, I think it's a really, really difficult element.
It is.
Especially when you've got more than 2 or 3 children in the mix, you know, because it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think the woman has to burden a lot. And men, did you ever watch the documentary? What was it called? Oh, you know what I'm talking about? That dating website where people were cheating.
Oh, Ashley Madison.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then you also see that like...
Well, that guy's just trash.
The Christian guy?
Yeah.
The one that was like, the one that had like 3 kids. The one, and was pretending he was like holier than thou. And then like, and then they kind of like got back together. But I was like, it, you know, like he talks about the like, the banality of like, you know, like normal life and then coming home to kids and a wife. So I say, I get that it takes 2 to tango, but I think really like mothers have to be given a little bit of grace
100%.
for the difficulty of like, especially when they're the ones left to deal with the kids. Like, you're not going to feel the
100%.
sexiest with like sick down your like top and like weight gain and all that stuff. So I think that is something where we have to just give a bit of grace as well, you know?
100%. I think that that's two different issues for me.
Yeah.
One is the couple not having healthy communication. That's what I'm saying. It takes two to tango, not the cheating part.
Okay.
So, yes, you are a wife and a mother of 4 children. There is definitely communication factor that you can be doing better in your relationship that will not only benefit the relationship, but will benefit the children.
Yeah.
Children can feed off a parent's energy. They feed off of role model, whether they're good or bad or mediocre. So that communication between two people needs to be very, very strong. And that is something everyone can do. The sex part is completely different. The sex part, if there's an issue, see a therapist, see a sex coach, a sex therapist, sexological body worker, somatic worker, whatever. There's so many modalities when it comes to sexual wellness. But that's a different issue.
Yeah.
The communication issue, though, is something like, for example, if the husband is feeling neglected by the wife because the wife spends all the time with children because she has to, right? Then the husband should have said something.
Yeah.
And if the husband says something, the wife, does she go then, hey, but listen to me, here's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I spend all my time taking care of the children, right? So there needs to be communication and compromise.
Yeah.
However, a lot of these couples can't find a moment of compromise because a lot of times they are very defensive of what they have to do. And rightfully so. Like you said, like, if you're a woman taking care of 4 children and then also on top of that probably have to work, is there energy to have sex?
Exactly
Probably not.
Yeah,
probably not. But so that's why you have to talk about it. Listen, babe, I have no energy.
Yeah.
So what can we do at this point? Is it childcare? Is it staycations?
Yeah.
Is it that, every once a month we put the children in childcare or grandparents take care of them. We go on a staycation and we have a connecting sexual session together. What is the solution here? Because blaming each other is not an effective strategy at this point. Saying, oh, it's her fault because she doesn't give me attention. It's his fault for doing blah, blah, blah. Like, it really doesn't work. So this is kind of our conversation prior. Divisive strategies don't work.
Yeah.
How do we collaborate?
Yeah.
That's gonna work. So I feel really bad for a lot of women that are my clients that get cheated on because it's very, very freaking common. It's so,
but do you think
so
they can
frustrating.
I mean, do you think, but interesting, like what I find fascinating about Esther Perel's conversation is also the notion of like women cheating as well, because I think that happens a lot more than people think. And I'll never forget the example she gave. She talks about in her TED talk about her client called Priya, and Priya comes from like the perfect, like, strict Asian background, and she does everything to be the perfect daughter and the perfect wife, and then she ends up like cheating on her husband with the tree surgeon that's like covered in tattoos, that's completely different to her husband, and having an affair with him. And it's like, oh, okay, but like Priya is living the adolescence that she never had because of the repression, and I think that people think that this is so black and white. I've had many debates with people, and as I said, I do not endorse the type of behavior, but it's complex. We're complex beings with complex experiences, and we need to understand. But do you feel that a lot of your clients can or cannot recover from cheating with their partner? Like they can work through it, or do you feel like too much damage more often than not has been done?
That's a great question. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's really 50-50.
Really?
Yeah. There's actually quite a few people that couldn't cope and had to get a divorce. I mean, granted, okay, like one of them like had sex with a wedding planner. There's like no coming back from that. But like I'm like, when they come see me the first session and they tell me the situation, I'm like,
no, guys. Yeah.
I don't know.
So you do a lot of couples work too?
Yeah. I actually do like majority couples work. Because it's usually either the wife or the husband find me on Instagram and it's like, oh, what she's saying, I resonate. Let's reach out. Let's meet her. Let's see what she thinks about our situation. So that's like typically how it goes on. But yeah, like people like that, where another one is like, he like secretly goes to these sex parties and by himself in a different city and tell her that he goes on like business trips, for example. Like something like that is never going to work. She wants a monogamous relationship. He doesn't want a monogamous relationship, like just by the core. It won't work. So I just tell them that.
Yeah.
I just tell them, well, listen, I can help you. We can come up with a plan, like coaching, right? We can come up with a goal, then formulate a plan, but you must stick to it. But they can't stick to it because the guy isn't meant to be.
Yeah.
That guy, not every guy, that guy isn't meant to be in a monogamous relationship. So for those people, get a divorce. But there are people that, so for example, one of my clients had lapse of judgment in Vegas, right? That they came in together. She's heartbroken. She's the breadwinner, doctor, breadwinner. They have one child. He feels super neglected because he's kind of like
his masculinity somehow. Yeah.
He's always left taking care of the baby because she does night shifts, and always tired. And so at that point, they haven't had sex for a year.
Yeah, wow.
So he went, to bachelor's party, Vegas, lapse of judgment, had sex with this one person, right? And super guilty about it. But anyways, they actually continue on to text. It wasn't like a one night stand, right? They continue on to text. And that's where she found out. Like
through the messages.
Yeah. And so that was really hard. And everyone was heartbroken. However, they were able to come back
from it.
We worked on it. We formulated a plan of them having a more proactive sex life. Don't take it to the back burner. Obviously, it's important to both of you to feel desired and happy. So we must do something about it. So we create a whole plan, and it was like over the course of 3 months, and they stuck to it, and it's just beautiful how it turned out.
Yeah, and I think some couples can come back from it. My God, I could talk to you for days. I'm like, I need to go for dinner with you, for lunch with you.
I know, we should.
Honestly, it's been incredible.
I definitely want to hear more about you.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that.
You have a very complicated life, and
Yeah, so you mean complicated as in like all the different things I do?
Well, no, just like from the past. Like,
I mean, there's just so much trauma and things like that, and like delving into it. But I will talk to you about that. Now, what is the plans for your future?
Yeah. You mean personal life, professional life?
So what would you like to see happen? Like, is there anything that we should be even more excited about? We know that you've got Celebs Go Dating coming out.
Yeah.
You've possibly got a book. Is there anything else on the horizon?
Yeah. So I got a book deal last year, and it's coming out next year. It's
Amazing.
called Sexpertise.
Okay, love it.
And it's going to be iconic, a cultural movement. I'm launching my brand called Love.
Amazing.
And the first product is going to be an organic coconut oil based intimate oil.
I love it.
So that's that. I have actually a brand new column coming out in Women's Health magazine.
I love it.
Called Explore. And yeah, hopefully a baby.
I love that for
you. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I want to get pregnant. I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to see this absolute firecracker of a child come out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. I have literally loved this talk. I think you're incredible. Could you just please tell everybody your Instagram handle and your TikTok handle if they want to follow you?
Yes, it's at lovebites.co. That's LUVBITES.co.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was incredible. Thank you.